future of automotive jobs. 860,000 people employed in the sector, as you well know. Demand growing, of course, for skills, and some skills falling by the wayside. So plenty of for our panelists to discuss. And again, I'm going to invite our panelists to come up in just a second. But before I do that, let us have a video.
For me, there are two major topics. Number one, it is the electrification and digitalization of our products. And number two, it is the world post the COVID pandemic.
People make cars. They're the most important asset a company has. And to be ready, we need not only to train new starters with the right skills, but also reskill our existing workforce.
We need to do much more sharing of knowledge and expertise across sectors, and we need to collaborate rather than compete for precious resource.
We need to support structured learning programs in schools, colleges, and in the workplace.
Fantastic. May I invite our panelists to join me, please? Have a seat, gents, and that's let's launch straight into it. I want to kind of start again with a sort of overview. Tim, we talked about building back, and and obviously we've got the ICE ban, or the new car ICE ban looming. What's the kind of general position for the way in which these things will have an impact on general levels of employment?
Yeah, that was to me. Sorry.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, you can hear us. Good. Sorry. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I thought for a moment we had lost you, and I was going to have to address the same question to people actually physically with me, which we're so unused to doing that they looked horrified, and I think I was as well. But now that we've got you, that's fine. Yeah. So Tim, I don't know whether you heard the question there, but it's a sort of general view of where we are with employment in the sector.
Yeah. Okay. I would say the biggest challenge, we're talking about jobs and the future reskilling challenges that we face. We talk about in the automotive industry, certainly within Toyota, about us facing a once in 100 years transformation requirement, not only towards the electrification, but also towards mobility. And I think it means for jobs, I think the skills that are required are going to change significantly. You know, when I did my apprenticeship, it was more about mechanical and electrical engineering. Nowadays, it's more about digitalisation, it's more about data analysis, data science, connectivity, autonomy, and there are many different requirements that employees will need to pick up. You know, we're still going to be manufacturing motor cars in the future at high volume, and I think we need to be able to respond flexibly and efficiently and competitively to the changing mobility needs from the consumer.
Astrid, same question to you, that kind of broad picture as you see it.
Well, thank you very much. And from our perspective, briefly, as we mentioned, we see three major impacts on all of us, right? It's the ban of the ICE, so the move into electrification, what the customer demand, the digitalization of the products, and currently coming out of the pandemic, what the prior panel as well discussed is whatever the new normal might look like and a hybrid way of working. And all of these changes have a major impact on our jobs. And I think sometimes if we think about jobs, we think mostly about the colleagues on the manufacturing floor, but we also have to consider that there is a major impact on our managers, how they lead these teams in the future, and also regarding our engineers that are moving, as Tim just correctly mentioned, from a mechanical engineering to become software engineers. So I think we should consider all three areas, our leaders, our educated engineer population, as well as the colleagues on the manufacturing floor.
And let's turn to the people currently on the manufacturing floor. Steve, your sense of what is happening at the moment and the perspective that they can reasonably have on the immediate future of the places they work.
Yeah, well, we've just come through an incredibly difficult period, of course, with the pandemic, and we've worked with most of the employers, small and large, mass producers and the niche market employers that are on this call and in this room, to work our way through that. And we've successfully looked after our people in terms of their safety, where they've been continuing to work, and where they couldn't work, of course, we were very pleased to work with government on the furlough scheme to enable that to happen. But as we come through, we've got huge challenges in front of us, and I think the fears and the anxieties on the shop floor are the same as those fears and anxieties that have been expressed during the course of the panel meetings earlier today. It's the long-term security question for the automotive sector, and that's multifaceted. That is about foreign investment. It is about new trade relationships post-Brexit. It is about rules of origin and about supply chains here in the UK, resilient supply chains and reshoring those jobs. It is about making sure that we've got a model mix and new products to invest in that secure the future of our manufacturing plants. We're fantastic at technology and innovation, but we're not so good at ensuring that technology is manufactured here in the UK. And so the fears in the previous panel around the need for investment now in the 6 gigafactories that we actually need in the UK to support the auto industry, the manufacturing of fuel cells, the manufacturing of other core high value components here in the UK, is central to the job security of those working in the OEMs and the mass assembly plants. Yeah. So all of this is integrated. There's a skills agenda. There's a whole series of measures that need to be taken. And we're very happy to work with employers and indeed government to ensure the future success of what is the jewel in the crown, really, of the manufacturing sector in the UK.
On the skills side of things, Judith, what direction are we going in?
Well, I think we've heard already from some of the other presenters in the earlier session about green skills, digital skills. For me, I think we have to put those alongside the specifics like battery technologies and moving to electric and hydrogen-driven vehicles, of course. But what we also need to remember is that other sectors are going through a similar transition at the same time. And many of the skills that we need to develop are cross-sectoral. And given the speed with which we need to move, I think there's a real case for better cross-sectoral working. That's why we've established a national manufacturing skills task force to try and bring some efficiency to that process. And we're working with the trade unions and with lots of different sectors to try and draw that skills map so that we can speed up this process, because speed is undoubtedly of the essence here.
Yeah. Steve, do you see progress being made when it comes to reskilling and all that has to go around it, and soft skills, as it were, too? What's the picture?
Yeah, we do an awful lot of work with the skills councils around apprenticeships, of course, and retraining the current workforce. We've got huge problems with the apprenticeship levy, which is clearly not fit for purpose. It's seen by many employers across industry as a tax as opposed to an incentive to actually entertain, really innovative apprenticeship programs and attract people into our industries. But skills is a huge challenge, but also knowing what we want in the future, what we're going to be manufacturing here in the UK. The fears that were expressed before about if we don't have gigafactories and we don't manufacture our fuel cells here for the OEMs, the manufacturing sites, relocating elsewhere where government support is more prevalent. Germany, for instance, European Union, 21 billion euros of investment in gigafactories right now. We've got £500 million from the UK government. I mean, it's just not good enough, and we need that support in order to transition our industries and understand the skills we need for the future as we make that journey.
Richard, are you clear about what those skills are and how we get there?
Yeah, I mean, another skill which hasn't been talked about is around leadership, actually. And I'm talking about leadership at every level of an organisation. We need leaders at every level. I'm not just talking about chief executives, but leadership for the future in our industry is going to be very different from what it is in the past. We're no longer looking at gradual improvements and medium-term model replacement. We've got an urgent need to make very great levels of change with the move towards zero carbon and greater use of technology. And we don't think about investing in leadership because in the past, leadership has come through people gathering experience and seeing those above them leading well. And now that's all ripped up because leadership of the future needs to be very different from what we've experienced in the past.
How? I mean, give us a kind of an example. That's a fascinating idea of how leadership has changed.
Well, I think the extent of change we need to make in the short term in the industry that we've heard in previous panels isn't going to happen by accident, and nor is it going to happen simply by people throwing money at it. And of course, it is a credible challenge that we need people to throw money at it, but that's not going to solve the problem on its own. We need strong and successful leadership throughout organisations to be agile and to make the change that's required, to make the investment, to make the operational change, and to continue with the successful trend of innovation that we have in this country.
Yeah. So when you look at the timescale, Judith, for all of this and for driving new skills and the acquisition of new skills, it's a pretty tight one, isn't it?
It is indeed, and in many respects, we're already behind the curve. And I think that for me, that's one of the key messages we've got to work through with government, that our current process for developing, whether it's apprenticeships or courses for existing workforce, it's all too slow. And for the future, for me, many of these things need to be modular. We need to develop those modules that can either be added onto the existing workforce, or they can be added onto apprenticeships quickly and easily without redesigning the whole apprenticeship program. We've got to get much smarter at the way in which we add on the new skills as and when they're required, because this is a fast moving and continuously moving journey, and we've got to get into that habit of lifelong learning for everyone.
Can we turn to immigration and the immigration changes, the obvious changes that there've been? It's possibly one for you, Astrid. What challenges are there that have been posed by the difference now in the immigration rules, and how can they be overcome?
Well, thanks first of all for the question. I think what we see in a day-to-day business right now is that what many of us underestimated is the new level of administration that the new environment has brought to us, as well as how long it really takes now to move people internationally. So us being part of a bigger international global group, we have always exchanged talent, exchanged know-how. That has become severely difficult nowadays to do this on, let's say, a shorter term basis. So you need a lot of lead time to get through the administrative hurdles of what you need to get in place regarding visas and approvals. And so we count at least 3 months before we can get somebody here to the UK. But on the other hand, we have to get our engineers out to do the test drives, to do certifications in different countries in the world. And here again, we have to check now for every country. What are the immigration laws? What do we need to put in place? And each of those steps as well costs a lot of money. So it is time, effort, and money currently, and really struggling regarding the topic of keeping it flexible and interchangeable regarding talent and know-how.
Yeah, we've got a few questions coming in from around the world. Andy Turbfield at Halford's Auto Centres asks, what does the government need to do to support the training of today's technicians and help to recruit those of the future in the run-up to 2030? Richard, your thought?
Well, I think the industry probably needs greater collaboration with further education and higher education colleges. We've talked about apprenticeships, which are important. We've talked about the retraining of the existing workforce. All of this needs new thought given the circumstances that we're facing at the moment.
Steve, what would you add to that if you had a list that you knew could come true and you could take it to government and they would do it, what would you put on it?
Well, I do think, I agree with the comments that have been made. I mean, we're in a very difficult position right now. Many of our people, of course, are very anxious about what the future holds. We've seen automation and the introduction of artificial intelligence. We've got a whole series of engineering and technology problems that we need to confront. We've got the challenges for R&D for the future. These are all of our members working across the industry. They want career paths, they want opportunities, and therefore, you know, that closer collaboration with further education and overseas colleges, and the immigration question that you raised earlier about people, mobility of people across not just Europe but the rest of the world. Leaving the European Union has created its own barriers to that. And these are all technological challenges that we need to upskill and reskill our people in order to address. but it's also line workers. It's about retraining the current workforce that we've got now in order to be, or to have the skills that we need in order to transition our industries and meet those technological challenges of the future.
I think, Astrid, you may have to go as you've got other things to do. And so if you do need to, then absolutely feel free to. And let us have, at least in virtual sense, we will think in our minds about a round of...
I'm sorry if there was a miscommunication. So we still have 10 minutes to go.
So we've still got time to go. Perfect. Okay. So, but when you do go, and we will not worry if you disappear in a puff of smoke, at least metaphorically speaking. And thanks for sticking with us for now. I want to turn to kind of wider industrial strategy. And actually, this probably starts again with you, Steve. Again, looking at government, looking at the sense that you get, it's almost tantalizing, isn't it? You hear about industrial strategy. There's all the political stuff that is obvious and well known, and we won't get into now. But what is it that, if there were kind of core things that you wanted any government with an industrial strategy to concentrate on, what would that be?
We won't get into it. I wish there was an industrial strategy, and I wish there was a plan to deliver it, to be honest with you, but I don't see it. And I discuss these issues with government and opposition parties on a daily basis, trying to get to a position whereby there's some joined up, integrated thinking, cross-departmental thinking at a government level, where they're talking to industry rather than the soundbite announcement, so that we can plan together, working with good employers across our nations, the trade unions, of course, not just ourselves, but other unions that are involved representing working people.
But just when you have those discussions, do you get the impression that there are some people, I mean, we're going to hear from Kwasi Kwarteng later on in the conference, that there are some people who actually want to do the things that you want them to do, or not?
Well, I meet Kwasi quite regularly, so I look forward to his presentation. But I mean, government at the moment is full of free marketeers. He's not really interested in making the levels of investment and intervening in order to see this transition through in the way in which they ought to, and other competitor nations will do. We have no champion for manufacturing, unlike in Germany with Merkel and Macron in France, even Trump in the United States, now Biden. They stand on a soapbox and they champion manufacturing. Here we've got very weak takeover codes that don't protect UK businesses. We haven't got the strategic initiative from government that's leading employers and the OEMs to talk to the supply chain, which is really what we need. Suppliers in the supply chain need to know what the future of the industry looks like, what the OEM requirements are going to be, whether they're going to be building in-house or whether they're going to be looking to third parties in order to manufacture and supply them, what those products are going to look like, whether they're going to be R&D, whether the engineering is going to be done by the OEM and some of the third parties going to manufacture that product, or whether or not it's all going to be brought in-house. And right now, investment decisions are being taken for the next 5 and 10 years. And we're behind the 8 ball on this one. We're too slow, government's too slow, and to be honest, industry's too slow at linking up with the supply chain in order to create that real sense of urgency about this transition, which we desperately need.
Judith, do you agree with that?
Yes, I do, very much. I think if the pandemic has taught us nothing else, it's the importance of homegrown manufacturing resilience to every country, and the fact that we heard about the ventilator challenge earlier as an example of that. We have to have that capability to manufacture onshore, and we have to move quickly and be responsive. I absolutely echo Steve's points about the need for joined up government. If you just look at the skills agenda and look at the number of different departments you have to interact with on skills, up to 16, 18-year-olds, we talk to DFE. If we want to talk about lifelong learning for existing employees, we need to talk to DWP. If we want to talk about immigration, we talk to Bays or whoever. It's not joined up. And one of the things we need more than anything else is a cross-government joined up approach and conversation about this.
Tim, would you agree with that? Would you add anything to it?
No, I agree with all of the comments. I've got nothing more to add to that point.
But do you, from your perspective though, if these things don't happen, if the situation that we've just had outlined doesn't improve, what's the impact of it?
Just repeat again, sorry.
Yes, if the things that we've just had outlined don't happen, if the improvements don't happen, the coordination, the sense of grip, Steve here was talking about the idea of people coming together and having a sense of common purpose. If that doesn't happen, what is the impact, do you think? What's the implication?
Well, I don't think we can face a situation where it won't happen. You know, I think we need to absolutely see greater collaboration, and we need to make clear what the auto sector, but not just auto sector, other sectors overall strategy needs to be, and we cannot fail. I think we need to move forward along those lines, is what I would add. I wouldn't contemplate not taking those steps. We have to.
Do we also need, Richard, to look, we talked a bit about apprenticeships, etc., and universities, but do we need to go back into childhood and into school and into an educational approach that changes in the relatively short-term future?
Well, I think we do. I think what we've learned, I'm involved in a youth charity that helps promote STEM subjects and learning that leads to careers, to replace the people sat in this room. And what we've learned is it's never too early to start inspiring young people to think about an exciting career in manufacturing. And we need to think about how we promote ourselves and what sort of profile we give, because you can have a very exciting tech career in automotive and mobility in the future. And you don't automatically think about that. School children may not think of it that way, and their parents who are guiding them may not think of it that way. But that is the future. That's what we need them to be excited about, and that's what we need them to come through and fulfill.
Yeah, and that's another one for you, Judith. I'm assuming that you would agree wholeheartedly with that.
Yes, absolutely, and I think we need to think of new ways of interacting with young people. It isn't just about telling them that manufacturing is different. We need to appeal to the things that appeal to them. What we've seen a lot of in the last couple of years is that by using gamification, I hate that word, but gamification as a way of engaging with young people and showing them that the computer games they play actually demonstrate the skills that we're looking for, and we can make that link between what they're already good at is what we want in manufacturing. That makes a link that starts to build a real spark of interest and opportunity.
A few questions come in from the outside world, as it were. Here's one to the panel from Alan Thomas. Are we in danger of not having enough emphasis on physical engineering of future vehicles? Trying to get an electrical engineering intern who can work on motors and power electronics resulted in software engineers, not hardware engineers. I fear the same will go for chassis systems and structures, no hands-on experience or interest. What do you make of that, Steve?
Yeah, well, that's a very real fear. That, you know, we're fantastic innovators, as I said earlier, but when it comes to manufacturing many of those products, we're all too quick at licensing off the manufacturer somewhere else and then re-importing those products here. And therefore, having those hand-on skills is incredibly important. I'm going through the closure right now of GK and Automotive in Erdington in Birmingham. They produce drive shafts and prop shafts for the auto industry. I mean, that will be another product that will be imported from elsewhere if we allow that closure to go ahead, and another main core tier one supplier that won't be here to transition our industry and support our OEMs. And therefore they've got the skills, the knowledge, the experience to manufacture the products that we need for the future. But they need the confidence, the businesses actually need the confidence that there is a future here. And therefore those investments now in both people, in jobs, in skills, in tooling, in plant, are worthwhile investments to make over the longer term, because they know that the OEMs are supporting them, and indeed they know that the government is supporting them with the infrastructure that they need and the innovation, the hydrogen that was being spoken about before. We have to manufacture hydrogen, and that's an energy question. So making sure our small modular reactors from Rolls-Royce are now piloted and put in place. Our Sizewell C development is manufacturing green hydrogen, and then making sure we've got the infrastructure to get the hydrogen where we need it to be? These are huge questions, and questions for government as much as for the industry itself.
Here's another huge question, in the sense of a kind of wide question about where we stand and how people who are considering working in the industry might view it. It's a question from Graham Manchester, and he asks, the government wants to see fewer cars on the road. However, the industry believes there'll be more cars on the road in the future. What does that mean for people currently working within the industry? And if the industry is being seen as being reduced, won't that discourage people from wanting to work in automotive? Tim, what's your view from Toyota about that?
I think I mentioned earlier the shift more towards mobility and a focus on mobility, and I think through greater urbanization, I think people's mobility requirements are going to change, and are changing. There'll be more car sharing, there'll be more micro mobility solutions. Not everyone will be purchasing a car in their life, or if they want a car for the weekend or to go away on holiday, then they will lease a car to go away on holiday. So there will be some impact, but I don't think that necessarily makes it an uninteresting career opportunity. I think there are huge opportunities within the auto sector in the future, not just manufacturing basis, but also satisfying. We were talking about autonomy, connectivity, data science, the software side of it. There's huge, but also for mechanical engineers as well. Those base mechanical skills and leadership skills are still very much required. We have to be able to adapt to the mobility requirements with flexibility, but also agility, as has been mentioned.
Richard, would you agree with that? That actually, I mean, that's that kind of overall picture. We often see cars as a problem. I wonder, number one, whether that changes actually as they become EVs or whatever, or hydrogen powered, but also that there is so much to be done because of that. Someone referred earlier on to that kind of basic instinct for mobility, that desire to get around is always going to be there.
I think it's an exciting part of our sector. In actual fact, it's the thoughts of where mobility might go and how it develops is exciting, and it creates a greater need for innovation, and it makes us a more attractive industry to get involved in, not less so. When you think about electric scooters, electric bicycles, yeah. How far are we away from drones and flying cars? Not so far. So it's an exciting time to get involved, Justin.
Let us not get onto electric scooters. Look, thank you all very much. Thank you those who are remote and those who are here as well. And a round of applause for all of you. Thank you very much. And thank you.